I paid my lawyer $73,000 to destroy my ex-wife in court, and he did. That's what made it so much worse when I found out the truth. My name is Owen, and this is the story of how I won everything I wanted in my divorce, only to discover that my victory was the most expensive trap I'd ever walked into. It started 14 months ago, when my marriage to Adriana finally collapsed after 8 years. We'd been struggling for the last 2. Maybe 3 years if I'm being honest. The usual stuff at first, growing apart, different priorities, less communication. But then I found the credit card statements. Adriana had opened 3 separate cards in her name, cards I didn't know about, and she'd maxed them all out, $47,000 in debt, designer clothes, spa weekends with her friends, expensive dinners at places we'd never been together. When I confronted her, she didn't even try to deny it. She just looked at me with this cold expression and said she deserved to enjoy life because I was always working. I worked as a senior project manager at a construction firm. Good job, stable income, but I wasn't rich. $47,000 was nearly my entire annual salary. I'd been saving for years to build up our emergency fund, putting money into our daughter's college account, trying to plan for our future. And Adriana had been secretly bleeding us dry. That's when I knew the marriage was over, but here's where it got complicated. We had a daughter. Lily was 6 years old, sweet, smart, and she was my entire world. I knew the divorce was going to be ugly, and I knew I needed the best legal representation I could afford. That's how I found Gregory Patterson. His office was on the 32nd floor of a glass building downtown, the kind of place where even the receptionist looked like she made more money than me. But Gregory came highly recommended by a colleague who'd been through a brutal divorce 3 years earlier. He's expensive, my colleague told me, but he's a shark. If you want to win, you hire Gregory. Our first meeting was impressive. Gregory was in his mid-50s, silver hair, perfect suit, the kind of confident presence that made you feel like you'd already won just by being in the room with him. He listened to my situation for nearly 2 hours, taking notes, asking detailed questions, and occasionally nodding with this knowing expression. Owen, he finally said, I'm going to be direct with you. Your wife has created a significant financial liability, and in this state, marital debt is typically split 50-50 regardless of who incurred it, but we can build a strong case. The secret accounts show financial infidelity. We can argue for a more favorable division of assets, and we can absolutely fight for primary custody of Lily. How much will this cost? I asked. He didn't blink. My retainer is $15,000. Total cost will depend on how aggressively your wife contests the proceedings, but you should budget for $50,000 to $75,000 for a case like this. I felt my stomach drop. That was nearly everything I had saved, but Gregory leaned forward and said something that sealed the deal. Owen, I know that's a lot of money, but ask yourself this. What's it worth to protect your daughter? What's it worth to make sure you're not drowning in debt that your wife created? Some men try to save money on their divorce, and they end up paying for it for the rest of their lives. He was right. I signed the retainer agreement that afternoon. The divorce proceedings began 3 weeks later. Adriana had hired her own attorney, a woman named Patricia Holden who had a reputation for being tough but fair. From the very first hearing, Gregory was exactly what I'd paid for. He was aggressive, articulate, and he seemed to anticipate every move Adriana's attorney made. At the initial hearing, Patricia tried to argue that the credit card debt was for household expenses and should be split evenly. Gregory immediately countered with a forensic accountant's report he'd commissioned, showing that less than 8% of the charges were for legitimate household needs. The judge seemed impressed by the thoroughness of his preparation. Your Honor, Gregory said smoothly, my client worked overtime for years to provide for his family, while Mrs. Chen was secretly funding a lifestyle of luxury at his expense. The debt she created should be her responsibility. The judge didn't rule on it that day, but I could see she was taking Gregory seriously. Over the next 4 months, the case progressed through multiple hearings. Each time, Gregory seemed to be winning. He got the judge to order Adriana to provide complete financial disclosure. He successfully argued that I should maintain possession of our house during the proceedings. He even got a temporary custody arrangement that gave me Lily 4 days a week instead of the standard alternating weeks. I remember calling him after that hearing, almost in tears with relief. Gregory, I don't know how to thank you. You're saving my life here. That's what you hired me for, Owen, he said warmly. Just trust the process. We're building an airtight case, and I did trust him completely. The custody evaluation was scheduled for month 5. This was the big one. A court-appointed psychologist would interview both of us, observe us with Lily, and make a recommendation to the judge about custody. Gregory prepped me extensively. Be honest but measured, he coached me. Talk about your involvement in Lily's daily life, her school, her activities, her healthcare. Document everything. Show that you're the stable, responsible parent. I followed his advice perfectly. The evaluation took 3 weeks, and when the report came back, it was better than I'd hoped. The psychologist noted that while both parents clearly loved Lily, I had been more consistently involved in her day-to-day care and provided a more stable home environment. She recommended primary custody to me, with Adriana receiving regular visitation. Gregory called me the moment he received the report. "Owen, this is exactly what we needed. With this recommendation, we're in an incredibly strong position for the final hearing." The final hearing was scheduled for February 14th, Valentine's Day, ironically. By this point, I'd paid Gregory $63,000, nearly wiping out my savings, but it felt worth it. I was going to win. The courtroom was cold that morning. Adriana sat at her table with Patricia, looking exhausted and defeated. I almost felt sorry for her, almost. Gregory's closing argument was masterful. He walked through every piece of evidence we'd compiled. The financial records, the custody evaluation, the testimony from Lily's teachers about my involvement in her education. He painted a picture of a responsible father who'd been betrayed by a reckless spouse. Patricia did her best to counter, arguing that Adriana had made mistakes but was still a loving mother who deserved equal custody. But even I could tell she was fighting an uphill battle. The judge took 2 days to issue her ruling. When it came, I'd won on almost every front. I received primary custody of Lily, with Adriana getting her every other weekend and 1 evening per week. The house was awarded to me, and the credit card debt, all $47,000 of it, was deemed Adriana's sole responsibility. I walked out of that courtroom feeling like I'd just survived a war. Gregory shook my hand firmly. "Congratulations, Owen, you fought hard for this, and you won." I paid him his final bill, another $10,000, and went home to celebrate with Lily. My daughter was staying with me full-time now. My house was secure. My financial future was protected. It had cost me everything I'd saved, but I'd won for 3 months. Life was good, better than good, actually. Lily adjusted well to the new arrangement. Adriana followed the custody schedule without complaint. I started rebuilding my savings. I even went on a few dates. Nothing serious, but it felt good to be moving forward. And then, on a Tuesday afternoon in late May, I received an email that changed everything. The sender was anonymous. Just a random string of numbers and letters at a free email service. The subject line said, "You should know the truth about your lawyer." I almost deleted it as spam, but something made me open it. The email was short. It said, "Gregory Patterson has been in a relationship with your ex-wife for 7 months. They planned your entire divorce together. Check her phone records from last October. Check the restaurant on 5th Street. You've been played." My first reaction was anger. This had to be some kind of sick joke, maybe from someone Adriana knew who wanted to cause trouble. There was no way my lawyer, the man who'd fought so hard for me, could be involved with my ex-wife. But that night, I couldn't sleep. The email kept nagging at me, so I did something I'm not proud of. I accessed our old phone account. We'd been on a family plan during the marriage, and I'd kept the account active because it was cheaper than switching. Adriana's number was still on it, and I could see her call records. I pulled up October, 2 months before Gregory and I had even met, and there it was, a phone number that appeared 17 times in October. I ran the number through a reverse lookup site. It was Gregory Patterson's personal cell phone. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. This couldn't be real. There had to be an explanation. Maybe Adriana had consulted with him first. Maybe she'd called him asking about representation and decided to go with Patricia instead. But the calls continued through November, December, January, all throughout our divorce proceedings. Adriana had been in regular contact with my attorney. I barely made it to the bathroom before I threw up. The next morning, I called a different law firm. I told them I needed to speak with an attorney immediately about potential legal malpractice. They squeezed me in that afternoon. The attorney's name was Harold Brennan, an older man with kind eyes and a concerned expression as I explained what I'd found. I showed him the phone records, the anonymous email, everything. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Owen, if what you're suggesting is true, this would be one of the most egregious cases of legal malpractice I've ever seen. But we need to be very careful here. Phone records show contact, but they don't prove a romantic relationship or a conspiracy. We need more evidence." "How do I get that?" I asked. "You might want to consider hiring a private investigator," he said carefully. "If Patterson and your ex-wife are in a relationship, there will be evidence, photos, witnesses, financial ties, but I need to warn you, this could get expensive." I laughed bitterly. I'm already broke from paying Patterson. What's a little more debt? I hired the investigator that same day. His name was Thomas, a former police detective who now ran his own firm. I gave him everything I had. The phone records, Gregory's address, Adriana's address, their typical schedules. Me 2 weeks, Thomas said. If there's something there, I'll find it. Those 2 weeks were the longest of my life. I went through the motions at work, took care of Lily. But my mind was constantly spinning. How was it possible? How could Gregory have done this? And if he was working with Adriana, what was the plan? Why had he won the case for me? That was the part that didn't make sense. If Gregory was secretly on Adriana's side, why had he fought so hard to give me primary custody? Why had he got me the house? Why had he stuck her with all the debt unless winning wasn't the point? Unless there was something else going on that I wasn't seeing yet. Thomas called me on day 13. Owen, you need to come to my office. Now. I left work early and drove across town with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. Thomas's office was in a strip mall, nothing fancy, just a desk and a couple of chairs and filing cabinets. But the expression on his face when I walked in told me everything I needed to know. He'd found something. Sit down, Thomas said. He opened a folder and spread photographs across the desk. The first photo showed Gregory and Adriana having dinner at an upscale restaurant. They were holding hands across the table. The timestamp showed it was from November. 3 weeks before my first meeting with Gregory. The second photo showed them entering an apartment building together. The timestamp was from February, the same week as our final hearing. The third photo showed them kissing in the parking lot of a hotel. I stared at the images, feeling like the room was spinning around me. There's more, Thomas said quietly. He slid another document across the desk. I pulled financial records 6 months ago. Your ex-wife transferred $50,000 to Gregory Patterson. It's listed as a consulting fee. But the timing is interesting. This was 1 month before you hired him. She paid him, I said slowly. She paid him before I even knew who he was. It appears that way, Thomas confirmed. And there's something else you need to know. I spoke with a paralegal who used to work at Patterson's firm. She was willing to talk off the record. She says Patterson has done this before, at least twice that she knows of. He gets hired by the husband in a divorce case, but he's actually secretly working with the wife. He puts on a good show in court, makes it look like he's fighting hard, but he's actually manipulating the case to set up the husband for failure down the line. What do you mean? Down the line? I asked. Thomas leaned forward. Think about it, Owen. You won custody of your daughter, but only primary custody, not sole custody. Adriana still gets regular visitation. You got the house, but it's still in your name only with a large mortgage. You got her stuck with the credit card debt. But that debt isn't going away. What happens when she files for bankruptcy? What happens when she can't maintain a stable home and petitions for a custody modification? What happens when you realize you can't afford the house payments on your own? The pieces started falling into place, and I felt sick. He set me up to fail, I whispered. I think so, Thomas said. Patterson gives you what looks like a big win, but it's actually a time bomb. In a year, maybe 2 years, you'll be drowning financially. You'll be stressed, overworked, struggling to keep the house. And that's when Adriana comes back to court and says you can't provide a stable environment for Lily. With Patterson's help, she'll have documented everything. Your financial struggles, your work hours, any small parenting mistake you make, and the judge will see that the situation has changed and might reverse custody. I put my head in my hands, and I paid him $73,000 to do this to me. Actually, Thomas said grimly, you paid him $73,000. And your ex-wife paid him $50,000. He made $123,000 off your divorce, while sleeping with your wife and plotting against you the entire time. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something, but instead, I just sat there feeling hollowed out and betrayed in a way I'd never experienced before. What can I do? I finally asked. You can file a complaint with the State Bar Association, Thomas said. You can sue him for legal malpractice, and if we can prove criminal conspiracy, you might be able to get him disbarred and possibly face criminal charges. But I need to be honest with you. These cases are hard to prove. Patterson is smart. He'll claim the relationship with Adriana started after the divorce was finalized. He'll claim the $50,000 was legitimate payment for consulting services she received independently. He'll deny everything, and unless we have ironclad evidence of coordination during the divorce proceedings, becomes your word against his. What about the phone records? I asked. They show contact, but not content. He'll say she was asking general legal questions. He'll say he referred her to other attorneys without recordings of actual conversations. It's hard to prove conspiracy. I felt defeated. Even with everything Thomas had found, Gregory might get away with this. But then Thomas said something that gave me an idea. The one thing we have working for us, he said, is that Patterson's arrogant. According to my source, he's done this before and never faced consequences. He thinks he's untouchable, and arrogant people make mistakes. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what Thomas had said. Gregory thought he was untouchable. He thought he'd gotten away with it perfectly, but what if I could get him to admit it the next morning? I called Gregory's office. His secretary answered cheerfully. "Hi, this is Owen Chen," I said. "Is Gregory available? I need to schedule an appointment." "I have some questions about my divorce decree." She put me on hold, then came back. "He has an opening tomorrow at 2. Does that work?" "Perfect," I said. I spent the next 24 hours preparing. I met with Harold Brennan again and explained my plan. He was hesitant, but he helped me understand the legal boundaries of what I could and couldn't do in our state. It was legal to record a conversation as long as one party consented. I was one party. I could legally record my conversation with Gregory. Thomas set me up with a high-quality recording device, small enough to hide in my jacket pocket, clear enough to capture every word. "Be careful," Thomas warned me. "Don't make any threats. Don't do anything that could be construed as blackmail or coercion. Just ask questions and let him talk. If he's as arrogant as we think, he might slip up." The next afternoon, I walked into Gregory's office building with my heart pounding. The recording device was a small weight against my chest. I checked in with the receptionist and waited in the lobby. Surrounded by expensive furniture and abstract art, Gregory came out personally to greet me. He was all smiles, professional warmth. "Owen, good to see you. Come on back to my office." He had no idea we walked down the hallway, the same hallway where I'd walked so many times before, trusting him completely. His office was exactly as I remembered. Mahogany desk, leather chairs, wall of legal books, the view of the city through the window. "So," he said, settling into his chair, "what can I help you with? You mentioned questions about your divorce decree." I took a breath. I had to play this carefully. "I've been thinking about some things," I said slowly. "About how the case went, about the outcome." "Is everything okay?" he asked, and there was just a flicker of something in his eyes, caution maybe. "I got what I wanted," I said. "Primary custody, the house. Adriana stuck with the debt. You did exactly what I hired you to do." "I'm glad you're satisfied," he said. "You worked hard for that outcome." "But here's what I don't understand," I said, leaning forward. "The house, it's a lot of financial responsibility for me alone. The mortgage payments are higher than I expected, and with property taxes and maintenance, I'm really stretched thin." "That's common after a divorce," Gregory said smoothly. "The transition period can be challenging, but you'll adjust." "Will I?" I asked. "Because I did some calculations, and I don't think I can keep the house for more than another year, maybe 2 if I'm lucky. I'm going to have to sell it. And when I do, that's going to look bad for custody, isn't it? Moving Lily out of the house she grew up in." Gregory's expression didn't change, but his hands stilled on his desk. "That's speculation, Owen. You might find ways to manage the finances." "Or," I said carefully, "maybe that was the plan all along." There was a long silence. "I'm not sure what you mean," Gregory finally said. "I think you do," I said quietly. "I think you knew exactly what you were doing when you fought for me to keep the house. You knew I couldn't afford it long-term. You knew it would become a burden, and when I eventually have to sell it or lose it, that's when Adriana comes back to court for a custody modification, claiming I can't provide stability." Gregory's face had gone very still. "Owen, that's a very serious accusation. Are you suggesting that I somehow didn't fulfill my duties as your attorney?" "I'm suggesting that you've been sleeping with my ex-wife since before I ever hired you," I said. My voice was shaking, but I kept going. "I'm suggesting that she paid you $50,000. I'm suggesting that this entire divorce was a setup, and that you played me perfectly." For a long moment, Gregory just looked at me, and then, slowly, his expression changed. The professional warmth disappeared. What replaced it was something cold and calculating. "You can't prove any of that," he said flatly. "Can I?" I asked. "I have phone records showing you and Adriana in constant contact throughout our divorce. I have financial records showing her payment to you. I have photographs of you two together." Gregory's jaw tightened. "So what? Adriana and I are in a relationship. That relationship began after your divorce was finalized. Everything I did as your attorney was proper and legal. I won your case, exactly as you hired me to do." "You won me a time bomb," I said. "You set me up to fail." "I set you up to get exactly what you asked for," Gregory shot back, and now there was anger in his voice, real anger. "You wanted custody, you got primary custody. You wanted the house, you got the house. You wanted your wife stuck with the debt. That's what happened. I delivered everything you paid me for." "While secretly working against me," I said. "I worked for you," Gregory said coldly. "I filed every motion. I argued every hearing. I got you a favorable custody evaluation. I got you a settlement that 90% of men would kill for if you can't manage your finances well enough to maintain what you won. That's not my problem. But you knew I wouldn't be able to maintain it," I pressed. "That was your plan with Adriana." Gregory stood up. "This conversation is over. You need to leave my office." "Not yet," I said. "I need to understand why. Why would you do this? Just for money? For a relationship with Adriana?" He stared at me for a long moment, and then, Maybe because he thought I couldn't do anything with the information, or maybe because he couldn't help himself. He told me the truth. "You want to know why?" he said. "Because men like you deserve it. You come into my office whining about your wives, about how you've been wronged, about how you need to protect yourselves. You pay me to destroy the women you promised to love. You pay me to take their children away. You pay me to leave them with nothing." "Adriana stole from me," I said quietly. "Did she?" Gregory snapped. "Or did she spend money trying to feel valued in a marriage where you were never home, where you spent more time at work than with your family? I've read your depositions, Owen. I've seen your bank records. You controlled every penny. She had to ask permission to buy groceries, and then you're surprised when she opens her own credit cards." I felt like I'd been slapped. "That's not. I wasn't controlling. I was trying to save for our future." "You were suffocating her," Gregory said. "And when she finally pushed back, you hired me to punish her. So yes, I took your money, and yes, I gave you exactly what you thought you wanted. And when it all falls apart, and you lose that house, and Adriana takes Lily back, maybe you'll finally understand what you did." The recording device was still running. Every word was being captured. "So you admit it," I said. "You admit you conspired with Adriana. You admit you manipulated the case." Gregory's eyes narrowed. Then he smiled, a cold, bitter smile. "I admit that I fell in love with a woman who was trapped in a miserable marriage. I admit that I represented you competently and ethically within the bounds of the law. And I admit that I have no sympathy for what happens to you next. Now get out of my office before I call security." I stood up slowly. "You're done, Gregory. You know that, right? This is over." "The only thing that's done," he said, "is your ability to afford that house. I give you 6 months. I walked out of his office, rode the elevator down 32 floors, and made it to my car before my hands started shaking so badly I couldn't hold the steering wheel, but I had what I needed. I had his confession on tape. The next 3 months were a legal whirlwind. I filed a complaint with the State Bar Association, including the recording, the phone records, the financial documents, and Thomas's investigative report. Harold Brennan filed a legal malpractice lawsuit against Gregory on my behalf. Gregory tried to fight it. He claimed the recording was taken out of context. He claimed his relationship with Adriana was perfectly innocent and had started after the divorce. He claimed every penny he'd been paid was legitimate. But the evidence was overwhelming. The Bar Association launched a full investigation. They subpoenaed Gregory's records and found 2 other cases with the same pattern. Husbands who'd hired him, wives who'd paid him secretly, divorces that looked like wins but were actually designed to fail. The hearing was held in August. Gregory's attorney tried to argue that he'd never explicitly promised to work against his clients, that he'd fulfilled his contractual obligations, that his personal relationships were his own business, but the disciplinary committee saw through it. They suspended his license for 5 years, pending a full disbarment hearing. The criminal investigation was ongoing, and Adriana, when everything came out, she made a terrible mistake. She tried to file for an emergency custody modification, claiming that I was unstable and making false accusations against her boyfriend. But the evidence I'd presented in the bar complaint was now public record. The judge saw the phone records, the financial payments, everything, at the hearing. The judge looked at Adriana with an expression of absolute disgust. "Mrs. Chen," she said coldly, "you paid an attorney to manipulate your divorce proceedings. You engaged in a conspiracy to defraud the court and your ex-husband. You have demonstrated a pattern of dishonesty and manipulation that raises serious questions about your judgment and character." Adriana tried to argue. Patricia tried to defend her. But it was hopeless. The judge modified the custody order. But not in the way Adriana had hoped. My custody was changed from primary to sole, with Adriana receiving only supervised visitation pending a psychological evaluation. I walked out of that courtroom feeling like I'd finally actually won. The financial settlement took longer. Gregory's malpractice insurance company tried to settle for $40,000. Harold pushed for more. We eventually settled for $215,000, which covered my legal fees, Gregory's fees, and a significant amount for emotional distress and punitive damages. The insurance company paid. Gregory personally filed for bankruptcy. I used the settlement money to pay down my mortgage and set up a proper college fund for Lily. I refinanced the house at a lower rate. For the first time in over a year, I could breathe. Lily asked me once why she couldn't see her mom as much anymore. I kept it simple. Told her that her mom had made some mistakes and needed to work on some things, but that she still loved her very much. Lily seemed to accept that. She was resilient, stronger than I'd given her credit for. As for Gregory, the last I heard, he was working as a consultant for a legal document preparation service. His disbarment hearing is scheduled for next year. He'll never practice law again, and Adriana. She completed her court-ordered therapy and evaluations. The supervised visitation has been relaxed to standard visitation now. We communicate strictly through a court-approved app. She has a new job, a smaller apartment. She's rebuilding her life. I don't hate her anymore. I don't hate Gregory anymore either, honestly. I'm just tired of the whole thing, but I learned something through all of this. I learned that the person you trust most, the person you pay to protect you, might be the one plotting against you. I learned that arrogance always leaves evidence. And I learned that sometimes winning the battle means absolutely nothing if you don't understand the war you're really fighting. I also learned something else, something harder to admit. Gregory was partially right about me, not about the conspiracy, not about the betrayal, but about the control. I did manage our finances tightly. I did work too much. I did make Adriana feel like she had to ask permission for things. None of that justified what she did. None of that justified what Gregory did. But it was still true. I'm trying to be better now. I'm trying to be present with Lily. I'm trying to not let work consume me. I'm trying to not see every relationship as something that needs to be managed and controlled. It's hard. I spent $73,000, suffered through months of betrayal, and nearly lost my daughter because I hired a lawyer who was sleeping with my ex-wife. But in a strange way, the whole nightmare forced me to examine myself in ways I never would have otherwise. Last month, Lily's teacher called me in for a parent conference. I immediately panicked, thinking something was wrong, but when I got there, she just wanted to tell me that Lily had written an essay for class about her hero, and she'd written about me. The teacher showed me the essay. It was simple, the way a 7-year-old writes, but Lily had written about how I always made her breakfast before school, how I helped her with her homework every night, how I took her to the park on Sundays, and how I made her feel safe. I cried in that classroom. I'm not ashamed to admit it. After everything that had happened, after all the manipulation and betrayal and legal battles, my daughter still saw me as her hero. That's when I realized something. Gregory had tried to set me up to fail, but he'd actually done the opposite. He'd forced me to become the father I should have been all along. He'd forced me to prioritize what actually mattered, and in trying to destroy me, he'd accidentally saved me. I still have the recording of that conversation in his office. Sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I listen to it again, not because I enjoy reliving the betrayal, but because I need to remember how it felt to discover that the person I trusted most was working against me. It keeps me vigilant. It keeps me careful. But it also keeps me humble because the truth is, I almost let Gregory get away with it. If that anonymous email hadn't arrived, if I hadn't followed up on it, if I hadn't hired Thomas, I would never have known. I would have struggled with the house payments for another year, maybe 2. I would have gotten more and more stressed and overwhelmed. And when Adriana filed for custody modification, I might have actually lost Lily. Gregory's plan would have worked perfectly, but it didn't, because someone sent me that email. I still don't know who it was. The email address was untraceable, created specifically to send that one message and then abandoned. Thomas tried to track it down, but whoever sent it knew how to cover their tracks. My best guess, it was someone from Gregory's office, maybe the paralegal who talked to Thomas, maybe someone else who knew what he was doing and couldn't stomach it anymore, maybe someone who'd watched him do this to other clients and finally decided enough was enough. Whoever it was, they saved my life. They saved my relationship with my daughter, and I'll never be able to thank them. Harold Brennan told me something interesting during the malpractice case. He said that Gregory's pattern, this whole scheme he'd been running, probably started small. Maybe he represented someone in a divorce, genuinely and ethically, and then he met the opposing party afterward, and they fell in love, and he realized that he'd been fighting against someone he cared about, and from there, it was a slow descent. The next time, maybe he took a consultation with the wife before officially representing the husband. Then he started coordinating strategy. Then he started accepting payment from both sides, until finally, it became his whole business model. Find vulnerable men going through divorces, take their money, sleep with their wives, and set them up for long-term failure. It's almost impressive in its cruelty. Almost. The criminal investigation against Gregory is still ongoing. The district attorney is building a case for fraud and conspiracy. If they can prove he knowingly defrauded multiple clients, he could face jail time. Not a lot, probably a year or 2 at most, but for someone like Gregory, someone whose entire identity was built on being a successful attorney, that would be devastating. Part of me wants to see him in prison, part of me wants him to suffer the way I suffered, but mostly, I just want it to be over. I want to focus on Lily. I want to rebuild my savings. I want to maybe, eventually, trust someone again, not romantically, not yet, but just trust in general. Trust that not everyone is working an angle. Trust that some people are genuinely what they appear to be. That's the hardest part of all of this. The betrayal, the financial loss, even the stress of the legal battles. All of that is survivable, but the damage to my ability to trust, that might be permanent. I second-guess everything now. When a colleague offers to help with a project, I wonder what they really want. When someone's friendly to me, I wonder what their angle is. When Lily's teacher compliments her progress, I wonder if she's building up to asking for something. It's exhausting. And it's lonely. My therapist tells me this is normal. She says that betrayal trauma, especially betrayal by someone in a position of authority and trust, rewires your brain. It makes you hypervigilant. It makes you see threats everywhere. She also says it gets better with time, that I'll learn to trust again, slowly and carefully. That I'll learn to distinguish between reasonable caution and paranoid suspicion. I hope she's right. Last week, I went on a date, first one in over a year. A woman named Rachel who works in accounting at a different company. We met through a mutual friend, had coffee, talked about normal things. It was nice. She asked me about my divorce. I gave her the brief version, left out the part about my lawyer sleeping with my ex-wife. Just said it was complicated and messy, but that I have custody of my daughter and we're doing well now. She told me about her divorce. 2, her ex-husband had cheated, left her for someone he met at the gym. Standard story, painful but not. Conspiratorial. We talked for 2 hours. She was easy to talk to, funny, smart, kind. At the end, she asked if I wanted to do it again sometime, and I wanted to say yes, I really did, but I couldn't, because all I could think was, what if she's not what she seems? What if this is another setup? What if she's working some angle I can't see yet? I know that's crazy. I know that's my trauma talking, but I couldn't get past it, so I told her I needed more time, that I wasn't ready yet. She was understanding. Said to call her if I changed my mind. She gave me her number. I haven't called. Maybe I will eventually, or maybe I'll meet someone else when I'm more ready. Or maybe I'll just focus on being Lily's dad for a while longer. That's enough for now. That's more than enough. Lily and I have a good life. We have our routines. Saturday morning pancakes. Sunday afternoon park visits. Wednesday evening pizza and movie night. She's thriving in school. She has friends. She's happy and I'm getting there. I'm not happy yet. Not really. But I'm stable. I'm safe. I'm present. The house is quiet right now. Lily's at Adriana's for the weekend. One of her regular visits. I trust that she's safe there. Adriana has changed. Or at least she's pretending to change. Either way. The supervised visits went well and the court approved unsupervised time. I spent this afternoon cleaning out my office. I found the folder with all the paperwork from the divorce, all the court filings, all the motions, all the bills from Gregory's office, every document stamped with his law firm's logo. I almost threw it all away. Almost shredded every piece of paper and deleted every digital file. Just erased the whole nightmare from my records, but I didn't, because I need to remember, not to torture myself, but to protect myself. To remember that betrayal can come from anywhere. To remember that trust has to be earned. To remember that people aren't always what they seem, and to remember that I survived it, that I caught on, that I fought back, that I won, not the fake win that Gregory orchestrated, not the strategic trap disguised as a victory, but a real win, justice, accountability, truth that matters, that has to matter. I keep thinking about what Gregory said in his office that day, about how I deserved what happened to me, about how I'd been controlling, about how I'd pushed Adriana into her choices, and the thing is, there's a kernel of truth in there, buried under all the justifications and rationalizations and cruelty. There's a piece of truth. I wasn't a perfect husband. I did work too much. I did control the finances too tightly. I did make Adriana feel small sometimes, even if I didn't mean to, but that doesn't justify what she did, and it certainly doesn't justify what Gregory did. You can acknowledge your mistakes without accepting blame for someone else's betrayal. That's what my therapist keeps telling me. You can say I wasn't perfect without saying I deserve to be betrayed. I'm still learning that balance. Some days are harder than others. Some days I wake up angry all over again. Furious at Gregory for manipulating me, furious at Adriana for conspiring against me, furious at myself for not seeing it sooner. Other days, I wake up and make Lily breakfast and go to work and come home and help with homework and read bedtime stories. And I don't think about it at all. Those are the good days. Those are the days when I feel like maybe I'm actually healing. The settlement money helped. $215,000, minus Harold's fees and taxes, left me with about $140,000. That's more money than I've ever had in my life. More than Gregory took from me. More than Adriana spent. I put half of it into Lily's college fund. The other half went to paying down the mortgage and building up a 6-month emergency fund. I'm not touching it unless absolutely necessary. That's one change I've made. I'm not as controlling about money anymore. But I'm also not going to be irresponsible. There's a middle ground, a place where I can be smart and careful without being suffocating. I let Lily pick out her own clothes now, within reason. I let her choose what she wants for dinner sometimes. Small decisions, age-appropriate autonomy, and when she's older. When she starts earning her own money, I'll teach her how to manage it without managing it for her. I'll give her room to make mistakes, small mistakes, Learning mistakes, not the kind of mistakes that create $47,000 in debt, but mistakes nonetheless, because Gregory was right about one thing. Even if his motives were evil, you can't control everything. You can't protect yourself from every possible betrayal. You can't micromanage your way to safety, sometimes. You just have to trust people, and sometimes they'll betray you, and when that happens, you survive it, you document it, you fight back, and you win or you don't win. Sometimes you just survive, and that's okay too. I think about the anonymous email sometimes, the one that started all of this. You should know the truth about your lawyer. 6 words that changed my entire life. What if I hadn't opened it? What if I deleted it as spam? What if I'd read it and decided it was crazy and ignored it? My life would be so different right now. I'd probably be struggling to make mortgage payments, probably falling behind on bills, probably exhausted and stressed and stretched to my limit. And Adriana would be documenting it all, preparing for the custody modification, and I would never have known why. I would have just thought I was failing, that I wasn't strong enough, that I wasn't good enough. Instead, I know the truth. I know I was set up. I know I was betrayed. I know I was manipulated by a professional who made a living destroying people like me, and I know I survived it. That knowledge, that truth, it's worth more than the settlement. It's worth more than the money or the custody or any of it, because it means I'm not crazy. It means my instincts were right. It means I'm not the failure that Gregory tried to make me into. Last month, I ran into Patricia Holden at the courthouse. I was there for an unrelated matter, some paperwork for refinancing the house. She was coming out of a hearing. We made eye contact. For a second, I thought about just walking past her. But then she stopped and said, "Owen, can I talk to you for a minute?" I didn't really want to, but I nodded. We walked over to a quiet corner of the lobby. Patricia looked uncomfortable, like she wasn't sure what to say. "I need to apologize," she finally said. "I didn't know about Gregory and Adriana. I swear to you, I didn't know." "I believe you," I said, and I did. Patricia had always seemed genuinely professional. If she'd known about the conspiracy, she would have been ethically obligated to report it. When everything came out, Patricia continued, "I was horrified. I've been practicing family law for 20 years, and I've never seen anything like that. The betrayal, the manipulation, the complete violation of ethics and trust." She shook her head. "I wanted you to know that I testified at Gregory's disciplinary hearing. I provided evidence of his conduct during your case. I did everything I could to make sure he faced consequences." "Thank you," I said quietly. "And I wanted to tell you something else," Patricia said. "About Adriana, she hired me believing she was going to lose everything. She was terrified, and when you won primary custody in the house and stuck her with the debt, she was devastated. She called me crying, said her life was over." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I don't think she understood what Gregory was doing either," Patricia said carefully. "I think he told her he was helping her. I think he convinced her that this was the only way to protect her interests. But I don't think she realized that his plan involved destroying you financially so she could come back later for custody." I thought about that. "Does that make it better?" "No," Patricia admitted. "She still paid him. She still lied. She still conspired against you, but I don't think she understood the full scope of what Gregory was doing. I think she thought she was leveling the playing field, not rigging the game." I wasn't sure how to feel about that. Did it matter whether Adriana fully understood Gregory's plan? She'd still betrayed me. She'd still paid my lawyer to work against me, but maybe it mattered a little. Maybe it meant she wasn't as cruel as I'd thought, just desperate and manipulated. "Thank you for telling me," I said finally. Patricia nodded. "You're a good father, Owen. Lily's lucky to have you. I'm sorry for everything you went through." She walked away before I could respond. I stood there in the courthouse lobby for a long time, thinking about what she'd said, thinking about Adriana, thinking about Gregory, thinking about the whole tangled mess of betrayal and manipulation and pain, and I realized something. I didn't want to carry this anger anymore. I didn't want to spend the rest of my life being bitter and suspicious and afraid. Gregory had already taken too much from me. My savings, my trust, my peace of mind. I wasn't going to let him take my future too, so I decided, right there in that courthouse lobby, that I was going to let it go, not forget, never forget, but let go of the anger, let go of the need for revenge. Let go of the constant replaying of every betrayal in my mind. I was going to focus on Lily, on building a good life, on being present, on healing. It's been 4 months since that day in the courthouse. 4 months since I made that decision. And it's been hard. Some days the anger comes roaring back. Some days I want to call Gregory and scream at him. Some days I want to tell everyone I meet about what happened, about how he betrayed me. But most days, I just live my life. I take care of my daughter. I do my job. I go home. I sleep. And slowly, very slowly, I'm starting to feel like myself again, not the self I was before the divorce. That person is gone, but a new self, wiser, warier, but also stronger. I survived something that should have destroyed me. I caught a conspiracy that was designed to be uncatchable. I fought back against someone who thought he was untouchable, and I won. That has to count for something. Lily asked me yesterday if I was happy. We were making pancakes. our Saturday morning tradition. She was mixing the batter and I was heating the griddle. "Are you happy, Daddy?" she asked suddenly. I thought about it, really thought about it. "I'm getting there, sweetheart," I said finally. "I'm getting there?" She nodded like that made sense. "Me too," she said, and we made pancakes, and we ate breakfast, and we had a normal Saturday because that's what healing looks like. Not some dramatic moment of closure, not some final confrontation where you tell off your enemies and walk away triumphant, just normal Saturdays, pancakes, life continuing. I paid my lawyer $73,000 to destroy my ex-wife in court, and he did, but he also destroyed me in the process. Tried to, the difference is, I survived, I rebuilt, I learned, and now I make pancakes with my daughter on Saturday mornings. I help her with her homework. I tuck her in at night. I show up for her school events. I'm present, and that's not the victory Gregory planned for me. It's not the trap he set. It's not the failure he predicted. It's just life, real life, messy, complicated, imperfect life, and it's mine. Gregory Patterson's disbarment hearing is scheduled for next spring. Criminal trial will probably happen sometime after that. I'll have to testify at both. I'm not looking forward to it. I don't want to see him again. I don't want to relive everything, but I'll do it. Because other men deserve to be protected from what he did to me. Other families deserve to be safe from his manipulation, and maybe, just maybe, testifying will give me the closure I need, the final chapter, the end of the story, or maybe it won't. Maybe there is no real closure. Maybe betrayal is just something you carry with you forever, learning to hold it without letting it hold you back. I don't know, I'm still figuring it out, but I know this much. I trusted the wrong person, I paid him everything I had, and he betrayed me in ways I'm still discovering, but I'm still here. Lily's still here, we're still together, we're still okay, and that's enough. That has to be enough, because at the end of the day, Gregory took my money, he took my trust, he took my peace of mind. But he didn't take what mattered most. He didn't take my daughter, he didn't take my integrity, he didn't take my ability to keep going, and in the end, that means I won, not the fake victory he orchestrated, not the trap disguised as success, but real victory, survival, resilience, truth. I paid $73,000 for the hardest lesson of my life, that the person you trust most might be the one betraying you. That victory can be a trap. That the battle you win might be setting you up to lose the war. But I also learned that you can survive betrayal, that you can uncover conspiracy, that you can fight back against people who think they're untouchable, and that sometimes the anonymous email you almost deleted changes everything.